Welcome to our June membership meeting. We hopefully will be ready to meet in person on our next meeting in July. We're working right now on the protocols and all that is necessary to conduct those meetings. So hopefully we'll get that going pretty soon. I want to tell you that I'm very honored to have a beautiful backdrop behind me, Francisco Alonso's work. I'm sure that you enjoyed that on First Friday, but I'm honored to have that behind me right now being displayed. So thank you, Francisco. This is awesome. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and call our membership meeting to order. Our membership invite, each time we ask that you please make sure that you become a member of the Arts Consortium. There are a lot of wonderful perks to that. If you know of someone that is not a member, please invite them to become one. There's, like I said, many opportunities that are open to you when you become a member. Next is our Executive Director's report by Ampelio Mejia, our Executive Director, and he will be updating you on all the happenings of the Art Consortium, because even though we've been on quarantine, a lot has happened with the arts, and we're very happy to report that art continues on no matter what.
Hi everybody, welcome to our membership meeting. We are extremely happy to have you here, and we're very thankful that you have been really great about being patient and calling in, letting us know how you are, asking us how we are, and just for watching all of our videos, liking them, subscribing to our YouTube channel. Really it all helps us really understand how this is going, and we've had such a really great result with these videos that we're going to figure out a way so that we can keep doing this. We realize that it's tough for a lot of you guys to come out every month, and so if we can get our if we can document our meetings and have them come straight to you, then that's pretty ideal. So we're going to try to do that. So this weekend I got to go out and spend a little bit of time at Balch Park on the east side of Springville and Porterville, and it was just amazing. It's very wonderful that things are opening up a little bit. And speaking of opening up, the Arts Consortium is planning on how we will be conducting that when it comes, because as it seems, things are opening up. So we're going to make sure that we do so in a way that keeps you safe, that keeps our staff safe, and that makes sure that we can just keep making art like we love to. Also, we want to congratulate Lavon Sterling for winning our 2020 Watermark Cover Contest. Her work is renowned throughout all the pastel circles. She's had some work featured on the Visalia product boxes, and she's just a really wonderful artist. So we're glad that you submitted your work, Lavon. Thank you very much, and congratulations. We'll be in contact with you soon. Taste the Arts is happening as it does every year, as far as we know. There may be some changes, but just so you know, we are looking forward to Taste the Arts on October 17th. Thank you very much, Francisco Alonso, for showing us all of your work and all the context to your work. It's really wonderful when artists can actually explain what they're talking about, what their intents are, the evolution of their work, without having to worry about, oh, is there enough snacks, or, did everybody get a drink? So it was really quite nice to have Francisco come and give us all the detail about his work and his gallery project, which is really wonderful. And thank you, Richard, for your upcoming presentation today. Richard Arenas is an amazing sculptor, and we're really excited to have him here, and I hope you enjoy that presentation. If you have something to say, if you have a need to express something, if you have a project already in mind, have a little bit of budget for it, and you just need that extra kick, the City of Visalia Arts Grants are available until our funding runs out. So with these, we encourage new events, things that haven't happened before, things that are open and free to the community, and things that engage people who may not usually be a part of the arts. Those are really exciting things, and we'd like to see those. So again, if you have something to say, if you have a need to express something, then please apply for the City of Visalia Art Grant. And I'd like to put out an invitation to our cultural organizations in Tulare County, people who specialize in providing programming to a diverse audience. If you've been disproportionately affected by this flu, please reach out to me at ampelio@artsconsortium.org, and let's see if we can schedule some time to talk about your organization, what you do, and how the Arts Consortium might be able to help. You don't have to be a nonprofit, and you really don't even have to have matching funds. So let's talk. Hey, and I want to make sure to invite you, if you've been making any art at all, we haven't seen you, we haven't heard from you, we haven't talked to you, so please join us on Facebook, join us on Instagram, send us pictures of your work, share with us, tell us what you're working on, and let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.
Next is our presentation by artist Richard Arenas, and as you know, he's a very well-known artist in our community here, and we're very happy to have him come and do a wonderful presentation.
My name is Richard Arenas. I'm a local artist, and I was born and raised in Tulare County in 1944, and went to schools there, grammar school, middle school, and high school. And then went on to COS for 3-4 years. And after that, I went on to Fresno State to become at first I thought I wanted to become an industrial arts major, but I got involved in the arts, and that just, I was really impressed with art because of the freedom you have to make things. Well, the first experience was actually at COS, because we had to take a humanities class, and the art department was part of that. So I took some art classes, and my professors there said I had a knack for it. I didn't know that I had a knack for it because I was mostly industrial arts before I did any art. So I kind of had a feel for making things, but I never knew anything about fine art. I didn't even know what that meant, fine art. So I was influenced a lot by those two professors, and then when I got to Fresno State, I was just really more impressed with what people were making. Well, my first concept, when I went there, I started in '72, and I graduated in '81. So those formative years was mostly making things, and most of the things that I was making were my ideas, but they were kind of weak in saying that I really didn't have a theme. I didn't have anything that was really, I felt was coming from my heart. I was just making things because I would see a tree or I would see a building and I would be influenced by something like that. But it really wasn't until I got into my master program that I realized what I needed to change. You want me to go into that part?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what I realized, they told me that I had to have a theme. And I'd heard the word theme, but I never worked that way. I just made my own things. So they told me, my board explained to me what a theme meant. So I thought about it for quite a while. And I realized, okay, what scares me the most? Well, I had been in 2 or 3 earthquakes. And I thought, well, that made me really, I felt vulnerable, I felt weak, I felt like I didn't have control of my life when those things occurred. And so my theme was tectonic forms. I read for like a year just on how tectonics work and the function of them. And so I did a whole show on that theme. So, but what that taught me the rest of my life in the arts was I learned that I had to read my subject matter before I started making it. And that's the approach that I took. And that was great, because before I was just kind of like hopping around and, okay, I think I'll do this time. And now I got into themes, and I got deeper into my personality of who I was, what I liked, what I didn't like. and especially about society, politics, things that people don't like to talk about. And I was real quiet about it. I'm going like, why am I quiet about this? I was questioning myself. So I decided that it was important to make art like the earthquake formations. We really don't have respect for the environment. I mean, we try to, some people do, most people don't that I talk to. The point is I have to have that kind of substance, I have to have facts, I have to just have that kind of information so that I feel like I know what I'm doing. I was just very fortunate when I went in the 70s after the war, after Vietnam, that there was a lot of funding for education, and the arts got a lot of that funding, and so there was a lot of veterans that wanted to become artists, and so that was really inspiring to see these people come back from fighting a war and becoming artists. I'm a giver. That's what I classify myself as. I'm a giver. I like to share my information with anybody that wants to get involved in the arts. And I don't care what age you are, if you're in grammar school, whatever, I try to tell them the good points about being an artist and the different professions you can go into. Because I hear a lot of negative from parents that, well, what are you going to do with art? Okay, what are you going to do with it? I go, well, there's a lot you can do with it. It just depends if you make it into a business. I go, so that's sort of a gossip statement. It's what I call it. People teach each other these kinds of things, that the arts are just the arts. But we don't live without them, right? We drive around in a car. A functional design. Right now what I'm doing research, and I have been for like probably 5 years, and that's child abuse. And that's, when I do these kinds of shows, what I try to show is not that there's just in America that there's abuse. I incorporate the whole world in how they're all abusing children. They're either slaves, or they have them working in companies like in Egypt, or there's things going on in Japan, there's things going on in Europe. So I try to incorporate everybody and say we're all guilty of this. So I am working on that. Almost done. I'm ready to start working on that. Most of the pieces that I do I use pretty much the same techniques that I'm going to be showing today. And that is designing with you either design with wax or I design with clay. And the clay that I use is what they call a plasticine clay. It's not a wet clay. And the waxes, they're kind of specialized clays that you can use to design with. So those are the materials that I pretty much have always used. I've used other things, but those are the ones I'd say 95%, I can't think of the word, would be wax and clay. Whoa, that's pretty heavy. Because first of all, it has to deal, for me, I've thought about this for a long time, is a lot of young people have a lot of confidence, but their skills are very poor. Their technique is poor. And before I would even approach anything, I made sure that I could make something as high as I could make at the highest level. If not, you need to go out and see what people are making, like in San Francisco or LA, even in Bakersfield and Sacramento. People are making wonderful work everywhere. But the point is, the youth has a certain amount of arrogance. I've spoken to a lot of them. And I tell them, after they explain to me, you know, that's really arrogant. I go, can I see your work? I go, because I've seen thousands of pieces. And I know quality. And I know where an artist has spent a lot of time on his work, or she has. I go, and you need to really understand that. Because you're going to get blown away. I mean, galleries don't want stuff. They want art. And what I've seen from the young artists, there's no substance to it. And a lot of things can be blamed for that. This is something that happened to me back in the 70s, and one of my professors was critiquing my work, and he goes, your work is halfway there. And I go like, I thought it was pretty good. We're all a little bit arrogant, right? This is great. And he goes, no, it's not really. He goes, have you looked at historical books? Have you studied the ancient times and ancient art, modern art? And not only American art, but all the different arts that are out there in the world. So that you know where you fit. You have to be able to criticize your work yourself. And that's hard to do. People don't like to tell themselves they're not equal to that artist. So you have to be real honest. So that's what I had to learn was, okay, if I'm making a bronze and I'm polishing it, okay, how far can I polish it and make it the best polish anybody's ever seen? And that's the attitude you should take on. Fortunate, I brought that up, because fortunately I took jewelry design before I took sculpting. And I've had a lot of, back in the day, I had a lot of professors, my peers, tell me, how did you learn how to finish work? I go, well, I had jewelry design. And I can take a piece of metal from raw to, you can see your face in it. And I go, so I learned from this jewelry teacher that if you want to make quality, you have to know how to do it. And you have to have that has to be your goal. He goes, and then if you want to, when you go along in your history, you can back off and decide, okay, I want to make this spot a little rough, a little ancient, but I want that contrast of beauty, polished, finished, and you have that contrast. Okay, now you're an artist. But a lot of people just want to go so far, and that's okay if that's your choice. But that was never my choice. I always wanted to be as good as I could be or as good as you. Yeah, I always involve environment, because in environment, we're in Egypt, I don't know if people are aware, but a lot of our computer access goes to Egypt, and it goes to these countries, and they're dump yards. And so there you have an environment that's poisoned by lead, plastics, all the elements that we use to make a camera, to make a video, ends up in these countries, and the children are the ones that end up with the diseases. So that's going to be part of that show, not just that they're dying, but why they're dying. And it's all environmental through man, through us. Some people get healed and some people don't. And why is it some do and some don't? Is my question. I'm lucky. I was able to get into the arts. And there's nothing more relaxing than to be working on a project and your mind can go anywhere. It can go. I always think of things more as being positive, healthy, take care of myself. Especially at 75, I have to do that. And more so than I did before. So yes, it's important that, you keep in touch with that. You have to, because if you don't, you're the one that ends up suffering mentally. You have to find something that's going to help you out. And that, to me, the answer to that would be the arts. Especially mental, because it just puts me in a relaxed state. Because I had my issues when I was young. And most of it, to be honest with you and people that I've talked to in lectures, was my fault. I made up a lot of things in my mind that weren't true. Especially with mothers and fathers. We have our love, we have our hate about them. So we kind of have to get those things, out there. And that the art really helped me in that. When I was in that stage, it helped me out a lot. So it's good mental health. Okay, if you would have asked me that question when I was 25, I would have been a bartender. Okay, if I would have been, I got another part. But to really answer the question, I would have loved to have been an archaeologist because I love, first I love digging. I love being physical. I love being dirty. I love all those qualities of things being physical. That's why I can't paint. I would love to paint, but I can't stand it because I'm standing in one spot, you know, for whatever hours I do it. And other things, you know, where you just have to be or contained. Yeah, so it's like, you know, I stay busy with what I'm doing. That's important. If you're speaking of cultures, I'm biased, would be the Mayan culture and the Aztec and the Olmec and all the groups that are from Central America there. And I am because my dad was always into his culture, the Mexican culture. And so somehow I attained that. And as I got older, and when I got to college, and I was taking art history classes, here was this title on a class to take. It was called Pre-Columbian. I had no idea what that meant, right? So what I did was, okay, I'm going to check this out. So I took the class. Well, it was the study of Mexico, really, in you know, Guatemala and Panama and all those areas here. So I wanted to really just know what happened before the Spanish arrived. What was the world like? And I feel like that way about everything, because I love to read Japanese ancient art, Armenian art. I like to read all that stuff because it's like, we're all so similar. We're not that different. We've got different names, but we eat, we do a lot of things that are similar. So anyhow, so yeah, an archaeologist would be fantastic to be, you know, maybe I'll still make it. So my favorite artist would be Ismael Noguchi, and he's Japanese and English, and his parents wanted him to become a doctor. He became a doctor, he got his degree from Cambridge, but he took a class there and it was an anatomy, and he make it short, he fell in love with making the figure and decided that he would become an artist. And so he worked there in London and he worked in America same time, going back and forth. And he became this renowned artist because he was, his work that I can relate to, before I knew what he was doing, was bronze and granite. And what I loved about his work was that his work was minimal, in that the work was not gaudy, and I like works that have clean lines and contrasts of different materials. And he was using bronze and he was using granite. And it just turned out that when I started reading about him, I was working with those materials, and when I saw what he was doing, I was really impressed by his style. And so that was really, I felt good about that. And so I continued working until now, 2020. I'm still working with bronze, and I'm working with stone, and I work with steel a lot. So he influenced me a lot. I just loved the way his lines were clean, simple. You know, I don't like things that are real busy, but I respect people that make that type of work. That's their talent, that's their gift. But mine has to be, they have to be cleaner. You know, that's just the way I work, especially with my modern work. It has to have that look. Yeah, and he eventually, at the end, well, I shouldn't say the end, but in his lifetime, towards his last years, he was designing for many of the architects. He was designing the entrance and gardens of famous architects. You know, and the story goes, you know, he goes, the setting is set for people when you walk through that door, not the skyscraper. So of course that kind of like, you know, created this off-balance thing between him and architects. Okay, the second stage here is going into how I design stucco plaques, or you can get into designing three-dimensional design with casting stucco instead of using bronze or resins. Stucco is a strong material, and it lasts for centuries, and it's just that it's not popular like it used to be. But if you're just going to learn the basics, I would recommend using this because it's not going to cost you as much as having a bronze casting or a resin cast. How I approach this is, first of all, is the theme. Now, I've done this for 50 years, so the thing you have to understand is I have a lot of practice. Okay, and what I highly recommend is that you practice and you practice and you practice. And you want to know where you're going with this. It helps. Do you want to do it for fun? Or do you want to do it because you want to become a professional artist? And that makes a difference in how you approach it. So if it's just for fun, that's great. But if you want to be a fine artist, it takes one word: work. A lot of work. Second, I'm going to talk a little bit about your studio. When you work with sculpture, you have to have a good sized place just to design your work out of clay, or if you can design out of wood, no matter what. You have to have a good facility, a safe facility, shelving, water, heating. You need those types of things for a studio. And it doesn't have to be fancy as long as you can get your work done. That's all you want to do, is be able to do your work. So that's one of the requirements I recommend. And another one would be studying all types of work of casting, designing three-dimensionally. Look at books. It's not expensive. It doesn't cost you anything. Just look at books, look at pictures, and get your mind going. And that really stimulates you. It gets me excited when I see pictures of what other artists are doing. And it pumps me up and get back to the studio and do more work. And it requires it's a daily job. I do it every day. My day starts at 4 o'clock in the morning, and with a cup of coffee, and I work in the clay designing, or I work with wax designing. And these are all specialty clays, specialty waxes that you can buy at Reynolds Art Supplies out of North Hollywood. And you can find them on a website. I don't have that with me. Not difficult, but if you really want to get into seriously and you want to work with the best materials, I would recommend Reynolds materials. Okay, so let's get into the theme. Now, my theme is the Mayan culture, and we're going to start doing what we call the transfer. Okay, the transfer is this drawing. It's on a piece of transparent paper, and it's a 5x7. And what I do is I take, this glyph is number 24 on the picture here, and so I'm drawing that on this 5x7. So you have to decide what size your tile is going to be. You could make it 12x12, 8x8. I decided I wanted a rectangle and make it a 5x7 in size. Okay, so now you have this sheet. Again, it's a 5x7 rectangle transparent paper. Draw it on that. I outline the areas that are going to be carved out. These lines, the dark area here, all that's going to be the recessed area. Sculpting is about subtraction and adding on to whatever you're designing. Now, your tools, which I admit I didn't bring with me. All right, so it should fit squarely on there. Put it on there tightly. Okay, now you're going to take a toothpick, or you can also take a pin. Anything works. It's sharp. And then you're going back and you're making the impressions into the clay. So I'm done. So now what I do is I take this off, and I think we can see that on the camera, the points. For example, like this. You're going to take and run. You make a trench and you keep carving that out as deep as you would like it, because in sculpting it's about the light and the depth. So you want your high points. The deeper it is, the more it's going to emphasize it. So you're in charge of that when you're designing. You have to decide that's what you want it to be, really deep. So you keep doing this until you get your depth. All right, then we take a scraper and clean the edges off, like so. And go back through again. And then we're going to take a tool and we're going to glide and knock down the hard edge line and make these look a little bit more rounder than creating a deep shelf. Again, your other side, same thing. Carve, glide through, remove the excess with your tool. And this is what you keep doing throughout the design. You get deeper, you keep looking at it, and you have to rely on your senses, like how deep you want this to be, or how realistic you want it to be. That's always the tricky part as an artist is, when do I stop? Am I doing too much or not enough? So that you really emphasize what you want to do with your pattern. So you would keep going through this, gliding through it, and subtracting more and more off. Okay, so that's what you do. But don't forget, these areas here, the dark areas, are usually the ones that you subtract first, all the way around. Terminology here, the design of it. Okay, so to clean here to here, this is the dark area. Take my tool, cut down, make your walls. All right, and then you go from the side and you glide. Glide like so, cut, and remove your negative area. Okay, so that's what you end up with. Now you got to do that. All these lines here, all that has to be removed, and then I start working on the higher points. And you're always working with depth, height, volume, line. You're using all those elements of design that you have in your head, and you have to make like a photo of it and stick to your photo. And that's how these become high and low. These areas like here, some are lower than others, so it gives the glyph, it gives it more interest when I do that. Okay, don't get too tight about it. All right, so now you're finished with designing. So we're pretending we're all done, correct? Doesn't answer me. Okay, oops, did I move something?
No, I think you're fine.
Okay, so now your next step is your third major step of designing a tile or anything. These steps don't really change. You might use different materials, but it doesn't really change the steps. All right, now getting into the mold making, and like as I was explaining, it's either referred to as additions, or it's called reproductions, or making copies. It all means the same thing. You're going to make more than one. All right, so in order to do that, you have to learn how to make a mold. Now, a mold is, yeah, it's really extremely important, because if you want to make it into a business and you want to make the same theme, then it's better to make a mold than to redesign it each time you make it. So it's better just to have the original, your mold, and you pour in your stucco material into your mold. And that's how you make your copy. So now, let's leave this, and let's move on to making a mold of this glyph. Now, the next step, there are a couple of tools you need. All you need is a gun. Okay, seen these, they're cheap. You need GE 112A is the number, and it's a general silicone, white, okay? And that's what you're going to apply over your clay design. Now, when you apply this, you want to apply a very, very thin coat in your first application. And you want to be extremely careful and agile and make sure that you cover every little spot. Because if you don't, you're going to have an air pocket and it won't cast properly. You're going to have to touch up that air pocket every time you make a cast, and that just takes more time. So make it right, take your time. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take and I'm going to show you how you apply this. Okay, press your little lever here, pull it back, put this on. All right, push it in, and this has a nipple a little bit higher, like ½ an inch. You want to cut that off. All right, then I take like a nail and I drive it through the hole, because there's a seal here. You want to drive that through there so that you can, once you squeeze the trigger, your silicone will start coming out. Now, this silicone will probably cost you like around $5.50 is what it costs. So I usually buy a case, and there's like, I think, 15 or 12, something like that in the case. So you might want to do that. It goes a long ways. In other words, I can cover this particular piece with most of this and still have a little bit left over for another project. So now we're ready. Here's our design. And now we're ready to apply what they call a gel. It's a petroleum gel. And you can find that at, I think, just any drugstore, if I'm correct. And what you're going to do with that gel, and you're going to take a little bit in your fingers, and you're going to apply it all the way around your design, at least 2 inches out. You're going to apply this petroleum. Don't make it thick. Only apply what you can see in the reflection of a light. So you need to stand up. You need to hold this up like this and make sure all the Formica board is covered, where those 2 inches. That's allowing you space. Okay, so once you do that, now you're ready to apply the silicone. Okay, now I'm going to use a tool here, and what you're going to do, take this and okay, you're going to take some, put your hand on the trigger, put it on your tool, and what you're going to do is you're going to apply this to the Formica where you applied the petroleum. Now, if you do not apply the petroleum, you're going to be in trouble. Let me tell you why. you're going to be in trouble because it's going to be very, very difficult to remove that silicone mold from the board. You'll have to use a razor blade, and you're going to have to go through a lot of work that you don't really have to go through. So make sure you put on your petroleum, all right? And then you go up the side of the wall, like so, with your tool. Very thin. You want a transparent look. You want to be able to see the clay, and you want to be able to see the formica, because you want to do a very detailed work. Here we have these crevices. Make sure you take your tool and you glide all the way through. And as you do these, the more you do it, you'll get better at it, and it won't be it's a little frustrating in the beginning when you do this, but you'll get it. So here we go. So you do that, you continuously do your lower level, and you can start at the top and work down, or you can start at the bottom and go to the top. But again, the most important thing is put it on lightly, softly, don't be rough with it, and especially do not be fast with it. When you do fast work, I would say most of the time you end up with sloppy work. So be patient. Don't have anything else in your life going, because all that does is get in your head and you're not going to think about your work. I always have to add those things when I design with people that want to come to my house. I have to tell them, okay, don't come between these hours. So that means your boyfriend or your girlfriend. You have to have rules that you have to follow. Because if you don't have rules and you don't have guidelines, you're not going to get your work done. And just think of it this way. If you want to be good, there's somebody out there in the world that's working hard to do what they want. And where are you going to be in that? So that's how I look at it. I'm competing with myself. All right? Not anybody else. I want to be the best. Okay, so we do the entire piece with the silicone, just like that. That's going to take you at least, if you're a beginner, an hour to an hour and a half. Okay? So just go, honey, don't come in my room for an hour. All right? I'm working. And you can't leave this, all right? So now you've done your first coat, and this is what it's going to look like. Your first coat over your piece. You can see that? Okay. But guess what? You have to do one application per day. Let it sit up 24 hours. Come back the next day, and you do the same thing over again. All right? Same tools, same silicone, same time. And you apply it. All right? Now you're going to do this 5 times. So it's going to take you a week, okay, to do this. All right, so once you're done, okay, all right, now you're going to, this is when it's finished. It's got 5 coats on it, and you're going to lift this off, peel it off your board, and remember the petroleum prevents the silicone from sticking to the formica. That's a big no-no. So that's why you use petroleum. Pull it off. Excuse me, I made a mistake. Okay, can we correct the mistake? Okay, once you finish this, your next step is to make what we call a mother jacket. I don't know why it has that word. That's what I learned in college. It's called the mother jacket. And that, okay, there's your design. You're going to make a plaster jacket over the top of the silicone. Now you should be asking you, well, why do you do that? Well, you do that because look at what happens with the mold when I grab it and move it. It's flexible, right? If you pour anything into it, it's not going to hold its shape. So that's why you have a plaster jacket over your silicone mold. Okay? That's the purpose of it. No other purpose would be for that. That's all you want it for. All right, so we have it on there. Okay, now I'm going to take you to the next step. Okay, step 4. All right? And that's making the jacket. Might want to cut right now. Okay, now we're into making that plaster jacket that's going to support the silicone mold that we have under this part of the plaster jacket. We have that. That's your design with a silicone mold. And I did one application of plaster jacket. You can get away with just doing one if you like. And this is my plaster. You can get the plaster in Fresno at Eagles Building Supply. And a bag of plaster will cost you somewhere around $10. That's, I'm trying to remember if it was 60 pounds, I think, is what you get. And it's not the stuff you want. You don't want to get the stuff that's at any of the stores here locally. You want to use an industrial type of plaster. All right. And all you're going to do is you determine how much water you need in here, in your bowl. And you're going to sift this, and I mean sifting. Don't just put scoops of plaster into the water. If you want a really good plaster that's going to have strength to it, you need to apply your plaster powder into the water by sifting it, like so. Take your spoon and you sift it as you apply it. Don't just throw it in there, because that makes a weak plaster. And just continue that until we're going to make sure that there's no water at the top of your plaster, floating on top of your plaster. You want to make sure that no water is above that layer of plaster. So you work all the way around. Can it still catch that? I just didn't know if it was, I'm in the right spot here. Okay, so let that sit up a little bit. If you notice, it turns from a white to sort of a gray cast. But I still see some water spots. So I go back and I cover that up. Over to my left here. And I'm going to say that this can be messy, especially when you start out learning how to do this. You want to make sure you might want to cover your floor up, whatever you're working on, something plastic, and then work on top of that. If it's outside, maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, so we let that sit up some, and we're going to go back with the spoon, or you can take an electrical mixer and you stir it up until you get a nice creamy mixture of plaster, like so. Just keep whipping it. I'm going to put a little bit of water on top of this, soak it in. Already did that first coat. And the thing about plaster is once it sets up, you're not going to be able to manipulate it. So you have to keep watching it and observing the thickness of it, because it starts kind of watery and it gets a little bit thicker, and then all of a sudden it sets up, and if you're not done, you're not going to change it. So now, here's my mixture. Not too watery, but also it's not too thick. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put a coat over the first coat and work it like so. Now when you have a bottom layer of plaster, the bottom plaster is going to really suck up that water from your top layer. So that's why I added some water to it. Keep working like so. Use your spoon as a spatula to apply and work the jacket. So it's not difficult. You'll just have to learn how to time your plaster as you work with it. Like so. Okay. Okay, so that's all you really have to do with the mixture. Now what you do is you wait. I usually wait till the next day, but you can take it off within an hour and a half. You can take the jacket off, and when you do that, okay, let's say an hour has passed. Okay, I'm going to take this off. Take that off. Okay, and I have a better one over here because this one's going to work. This one here, glide your knife underneath. That breaks the plaster from the formica. More so here, go across. That's releasing it. Okay, now take off your jacket. Okay, lay it to the side. Now you're going to make sure this is all the way through. If you do this, you won't tear your mold. Otherwise, if you try to get your fingers under it and pull it, you're going to tear it and you have to start all over again. Don't want to do that. All right, put the knife to the side. Take your fingers. Carefully, carefully. Don't yank it off. Don't be impatient. Okay, I have a negative. All right? You can do this with anything, any material you have, but you always have to have a separator, which can be petroleum, soap, whatever else you can find at Reynolds Supply, and make your job a lot easier. Okay, so I put that to the side, and I put it back into the plaster jacket. Okay, notice how you get a nice firm support. Move the original out. Okay, and this takes us to our next step. And the next step is making a casting of stucco. That was the title of the demonstration, how to cast with stucco products. Okay, which means that you're going to use cement. Portland cement is what we use, and just plain water is what you're going to mix together. So let me set up here, and then you'll get a demonstration on that. Okay, so this is still running? Is it? Okay. Because I'll be ready to, it's pretty much, I'm ready to mix this and then pour it into the mold. Okay, the next stage is, again, making your stucco, which is going to be the product that you're using to cast with. Again, it's Portland cement, comes in a 100-pound sack, around $10. You got 60 grit sand, which is like $5 a bag, and those are going to be what you make your stucco out of. Now, the mixture is 1 to 2, and there's other mixtures as well that people use, but I use 1 to 2, 1 of cement and 2 of sand, and then I'm going to mix it up, and then I'm going to pour it into my mold. All right, so let's start out with, I start with putting 2 scoops. So no matter what size this is, if you have buckets and you're doing a large piece, and let's say you pour 1 bucket in a container, a mixer, then you would pour 2 buckets of sand. And that would give you your consistency of what you want. All right, so now I take and add a scoop of plaster. Now the next thing I do is, before I add the water, I mix up the ingredients. Like so. Just keep mixing it until you get a even mix there. And now we're going to add water to this. Now, you kind of want this to be in the mixture like a milkshake. You have a little bit of flow, but firmness to it. So I'm just going to add water, a little bit of water. Take your time, no rush, no rushing. So what we're going to do now is you're going to take your mixture, which is stucco. They call it stucco now. And you're going to take, I take a small spoon, because what I'm going to do with the first coats is I'm going to take, because you have these little seams, these high seams here, and you want to make sure you don't get any air pockets. And so my approach to that is I take a scoop of stucco and I pat it into the sides of these walls. Pat it all the way down as you come up the side here. That presses it, and any air pockets that are in there, it pushes them out. So just, again, it's all about taking your time, no rushing, because you want to have a nice cast. Because if you don't, then it's just extra work you're going to have to do to make it better than what you casted. So just keep slapping it with the spoon, like so. Okay, the last thing I do is I take it and a nice firm table, I just pound it, shake it there so that you eliminate some of the air pockets. You make sure you get into all those areas that are high and deep, and you'll get a nice surface when you remove your tile. It's better to spend the time on it and do it correctly than to try to do it fast and make mistakes. Okay, and there we have it. Now your next step is, of course, this is the last step physically of what you're going to be doing here. But your next step is letting this dry up, letting the stucco dry up. I allow it to dry for, after I take them out of the mold, after I take it out of this mold, then what I'm going to do is sit it out in the open and let it dry, like I said before, around 2 weeks. And sometimes they dry sooner. But anyhow, you want to let them dry out, and then you're going to go into the last stages, which is, here's your cast right here. This is what we just casted over here. So this is stucco, hardened, 2 weeks to dry, and this is the reverse. And you want it to be sure that it dries out really well. And then now you're ready to file the edges down here, file the edges, and then you're going to go back and you're going to primer it, and then you can go back and you can paint it whatever colors you want and arrange your colors however you like. I'm just using colors that they used during that period. The Mayans did. They used a lot of aqua, blue, black, yellow, and so I'm sticking to the theme, and that's why I have these colors here. So now, once I paint them, then I'm ready to put them on the wall, just like a tile. You just make a mortar, put it on your wall, put it on the back of your tile, and press it against the wall, and you have everything completed. Now, another product that you can use, it's called Dense Cal. It's white. It turns into like a stone. It's called stone casting. This is a lot more expensive, and comes in 50 pounds it is, and it's like $20. So you get less, but it's you can do different things with this when you finish it. Again, primer it, and then you paint it however you like. So this completes the design, making the design, making the mold, doing the casting, and then finishing off with your paints. And just be patient and make sure you make something that you really like or you will enjoy once you made it, and you finish it off and you hang it on the wall or you put it on your dresser, and you'll feel really, really good about that. There's nothing like making something and going, wow, I did that. I want to thank all of you for looking at this video, and I hope I encourage you to make your own art. It's quite a process. It costs money. It takes time. And if you're going to spend that much money, you should be dedicated to it. And that's pretty much it. You just do it. Don't be afraid of it. Actually, I'm probably going to open my living room into my personal museum. Eventually the house will be a museum, and my son's going to take it over. That's going to still take some time. But my living room is pretty much set up, but we have a situation right now where we can't open it yet. And so when you do, you can call me at 909-3411, and Virginia will probably answer the phone, and just tell her that you're interested in seeing my work there, and you'll see bronzes and steel and other materials that I've made art with. So give me a call.
Announcements, please submit them to hello@artsconsortium.org, and we'll make sure to get those out for you. Our next membership meeting will be on Monday, July the 13th. We are asking that you please be safe and stay healthy. Thank you.